Welcome back everybody to part 3 of our Balloon Rider tutorial. In the last video, we set up our game manager with functions such as game over and reset. Now let's make some hazards for the player to avoid. Just to remind you, this project is available to download, link in the description below, and when everyone is ready, let's crack on. The first of our objects is pretty simple. We're going to create a rotating spike. If you go to the prefabs folder, you'll see that this is already prepared. Double click and have a closer look. And all it is our simple spike sprite with a circle collider 2D. Of course, we want isTrigger to be set. And I've applied a very simple rotate object script, which will appear on screen now, where we'll simply rotate the object by a speed. It has a nice effect. It saves us animating this object. And on the tag and the layer, we want them to be both hazard. So feel free to use this spike prefab, or if you have your own, but do make sure, if you do, that they are both tagged as hazard. Let's return back to our hierarchy and drag that spike prefab into there like so. Now, we are going to use this spike to create a number of different variations of hazards. Maybe 3 to 5 should be a good amount. Let's go ahead and create the first one together. So I'd like you to first create an empty game object, reset its position, and let's create a horizontal hazard. So horizontal spike, we'll call it. Then I want you to add a circle collider 2D to it. Don't change its size and simply set isTrigger as true. This is going to be used for when we spawn these objects. The collider is going to be used to read the distance between each one so they don't get spawned too close. Our player won't be colliding with this parent object, but with the spike objects. So let's go ahead and duplicate the spike object, make it a child of our horizontal spike, and duplicate it twice more. Let's zoom in for a closer look. And with these spikes, we're simply going to move them across by 1. And there we go. We have 3 horizontal spikes. So that's our horizontal hazard. Then duplicate that. And let's create a vertical spikes. Just like so. We can set these as inactive so we can see them. And of course, rearrange these so that they become a vertical one. There we go. So that's 2 down. Let's create a single. And we're not just going to use the spike on its own. We'll do the same again. Create empty. Reset its position. This one will be a single spike. There we are. I won't forget to add that circle collider. Here's a trigger. Duplicate the spike. And there we go. So now we have a single hazard and 2 triple hazards, a vertical and a horizontal one. What I'd like you to do is pause this video and go ahead and create 3 to 5 different variations. Go crazy with this. Be as creative as you like. And once you're done, let's continue. Okay, welcome back. I hope you're happy with the hazards you created. I actually created one more by duplicating my horizontal or vertical spike. It really doesn't matter which one. And I've gone ahead and applied that rotate object script to it. That's on our individual spikes. So I have a rotating hazard now, which is going to look pretty cool once we playtest this later. Now what we'll do is we'll make sure that each of our objects are set active. And let's create prefabs of each of these. So go ahead and add each one individually into the prefabs folder, just like so. So I got my single, my rotate, and my horizontal. We can also delete that template spike we were using. We don't need that anymore. And let's go ahead and place these within our scene. So this will be sort of like a tutorial section, this first frame. It won't change because these objects are going to be spawned once the player and the camera starts moving. So position them wherever you like, wherever you feel is going to be best for the player. So I'll do that one there. And I'll put this horizontal one there like so. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll adjust this one over here. There we go. So we've got plenty of room to fly and dodge these hazards. That'll do for now. So go ahead and have a little playtest. And you can see that our stars slowly rotate, and we have that rotating hazard as well. So have a little fly around and test out the placement. And once you're happy, let's go into the player controller script and make it so that the player can now interact and collide with these hazards. So go ahead and open up your player controller script. Now, what we're going to do is create a player def function that will call the game over function from the game manager when we collide with anything with the tag of hazard. Of course, that will be our spikes and later the killer fish as well. Pause, future Ben here. We won't be calling the game over from the game manager script when we collide with hazards. That, of course, happens when we collide with the water. However, we still do need to make references to the game manager here in the player controller script. So please continue this video as normal. All will be revealed in a future video. So please continue. For that, we will need two new variables. So underneath movement, let's create a public bool, which we'll call isDead. And of course, we want to be able to access the game manager. So we'll have the game manager, the GM, like so. And in the awake method, don't forget to reference it so we can access it. The GM equals get component game manager. Good. That's all we need thus far. Let's go ahead and create that player def method. And as we work our way down, let's stop at void update and let's create a new if statement to put our move and fly functions in. And we'll say if exclamation mark is not dead, so we're alive, only then will we be able to move and fly. And copy and paste the two functions into that if statement like so, because we don't want to be able to fly and move when we're dead. That's going to cause a lot of complications. Let's continue to head to the bottom. And now let's create that new void player def. So, player def, what do we want to happen? Well, when the player collides with the fish or the spikes, we want the def animation to play, and we also want to trigger the bool isDead as true. So let's punch those in first and foremost. We also want the player to plummet where they collide with the spikes into the water below. We don't want the momentum of their velocity to move them forward. We just want them to plummet right there on the spot. In order to do that, we are going to freeze the position on the x-axis by freezing its constraint. And to do that, we access the rigid body 2d.constraints equals rigid body.constraint. Then we want to signify the rigid body constraints 2d dot freeze position on the x. So when we hit a spike or a hazard, our momentum forward or backwards will stop and we will drop right down into the drink. To avoid colliding with other stars or other hazards that might be in our way as we fall, we'll also want to turn off that collider as well. And we'll do that underneath by simply stating get component, that capsule collider that's on the player, dot enable it equals false. Because we don't want multiple player def triggers to activate if we just so happen to hit other things on the way down. That's all we need for player def. But what about when the player respawns? We want to re-enable the collider again and unfreeze the position on the X if the player is able to continue flying and moving around. In order to do that, underneath, let's create a private void on enable. Now, re-enabling the collider is easy. We just apply the same again, get component, capture collider, dot enabled equals true. The rigid body constraint, however, is a little more complicated. It's not as simple as reading true or false. Imagine the X, Y, and Z axis are three doors. You open the X door. Great, but it closes the Y and the Z. You go over to the Z, you open it, it'll then close the X and the Y door will also remain closed. So in order to unfreeze the position on X, we have to select and freeze another so it unfreezes X. When we return into Unity, you'll notice on the player's rigid body, we've already ticked freeze rotation. So we don't want the player to spin around wildly on the Z-axis. So that's what we will use. We will make sure that when we enable the player once again, we want to make sure that the Z, the rotation constraint, is frozen. So we'll use that instead. So rigid body.constraints equals rigid body constraints 2D, freeze rotation, which is the Z-axis, which will then unfreeze the Y and the X constraints. With all that out the way, underneath, let's go ahead and work on our trigger. So private void on trigger enter 2D, collider 2D other. However, we're going to do something a little different. Because you can only have one on trigger enter 2D function per script, we're going to have it so that this trigger is going to process what game object we're colliding with. And in order to do that, underneath, let's create a void called collision check. In the brackets, we're looking for a game object we'll call collider. And what this collision check is going to do is when the player collides with an object, it's going to look for the tag of the object, because you might want the player to respond in different ways depending on the object it's collided with. Different animations, different actions, so on and so forth. For now, we're only concerned with one tag, and that is the hazard tag. So create an if in the brackets, the collider, the game object, dot tag is equal to hazard. Then we want to call upon the player def function, of course, and let's add a vertical force using our vertical force variable to make him bounce up a little bit to show that he's taken some hits from the spikes. And then let's head back to the on trigger enter 2D and make sure that the collision check and then the brackets, the other.gameObject is in there like so we can access and check what object we're colliding with. So like I say, we're only concerned with the hazard for now. So hit save. Let's head back into Unity. Once everything's compiled and you're ready to go, let's play test and see what this looks like. So when we fly now and collide with our hazard, our spikes, we get jolted in the air, we fall and plummet into the water, which triggers the game over. Hit reset and you'll notice that we can't move. Why is that? That is because on the player, is dead is still set as true. We need to set that as false in the game manager's reset function. So go ahead and let's head into the game manager script. Let's scroll down to the reset function, and underneath where we got player transform and player game object set active true, we'll type player.isDead equals false. Simple. Hit save. Let's give it one final playtest. Let's take off. Let's hit some spikes. We get popped into the air. We hit the water. Game over. Reset. And yes, isDead is now false and we can continue. Great. Let's stop there for this video. In the next episode, we will work on our killer fish, how he's going to behave, and how we'll add his collider, his trigger, into that collision checker that we created. Thank you all very much for watching. We do appreciate your support and involvement in the community in the comments. Please do let us know if you have any ideas for future videos you'd like to see. Until then, have fun, and we'll see you soon. Take care.